You're listening to Hello Moxie with Nicole Donnelly. In each episode, we honor the unbreakable thread that connects the fierce women who came before us to modern-day pioneers carving their own paths. We'll share stories of unforgettable heroines, celebrate their courage, and bring to light the lasting impact they've had across generations. Get inspired by the stories of those who embody true Moxie and pave the way for others to follow. Hello Moxie is sponsored by DMG Digital, a woman-owned marketing consultancy dedicated to helping B2B companies and e-commerce brands create exceptional customer experiences.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hello Moxie. I am delighted to be joined today by my dear friend, Andrew Stoute. Andrew and I met several years ago through LinkedIn. It's amazing how many wonderful people you can meet on LinkedIn and the wonderful relationships you can have. And Andrew and I's relationships is one of those. And I am honored to be a sponsor of his amazing podcast, Let's Be Diverse, which is an HR podcast that focuses on hot topics in HR to encourage diversity. And he's had some phenomenal conversations and guests on his show. So I want to turn it over to you, Andrew. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about you and who you are and what's lighting you up right now?
Well, thank you so much again for having me on. I really appreciate you bring me on as a guest today. So as you said, I am Andrew. I am a HR diversity, inclusion, and leadership professional. Got about 5 years experience in both fully. I always dabbled in HR and leadership all throughout my career. Whatever job I had, they always had me doing little things that had to do with HR. So I learned a lot along the way. As far as personally, I am I'm in Canada. So right now I'm in the western part of Canada. I grew up in the eastern part of Canada. So in the Quebec, Montreal, Quebec area, for those who know Canada well. Grew up there and moved out west part of Canada. I speak 2 languages, so I speak both French and English. I am a lover of sports. I am a lover of collaborating. I am a lover of meeting people, friends, great conversation, outdoors, movies, television shows, you name it.
Amazing. So Andrew, I have to ask, can you teach me and our listeners a very famous and easy French-Canadian phrase that we can try out?
Well, I guess the easiest phrase would be bonjour, mes amis.
Bonjour, mes amis.
Which is hello, my friends.
Bonjour, mes amis. How'd I do?
You actually did pretty good for a first-timer.
Beautiful. So listeners out there, if you want to mix it up and do a special hello to your friends when you see them, you can channel Andrew and say, bonjour, mes amis. Mes amis? Is that right?
Mes amis.
Mes amis.
That's it.
Bonjour, mes amis. Beautiful.
You got it.
Lovely. I love that. I've been to Eastern Canada on a cruise. We stopped in Quebec City and Montreal. We also did the Prince Edward Island, which was unbelievable. We did Nova Scotia. And I fell in love with Quebec City. Mm-hmm. So stunningly beautiful. The history, how it's built up on that cool bluff up above the river. Mm-hmm. And I love how it has the old part of town, the historic part right by the river. And then you take that gondola or the stairs up to the main. And I really felt like I was walking in a Parisian, somewhere in Paris. It was cool.
It's very European there, Quebec City. So actually Montreal is too, especially in the old parts, like in the old port. It's very European. They got the cobblestone roads. So very, very European, very touristic, both cities. So there's lots to do. In the summer and in the winter as well. Quebec City has one of the largest festivals going on. It's been going on for years, and lots of fun things to do out in those areas if you decide to go out there that way.
Yeah. Lovely. Mm-hmm. Well, cool. Well, this is a historic moment for the Hello Moxie show, Andrew, because you are our first male guest. Wow. And I've been looking forward to this because, we've historically been just interviewing women. And I thought to myself, who would be someone really special, one of my friends that could come on? And I've been so excited to have you on and share. So let's dive in. I want to hear, every guest comes on the show and they share a woman in history who's inspired them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear yours. Who inspires you, Andrew? Who is one woman, or maybe there's several that you've really been inspired by? I want to learn about them. Tell our listeners.
Well, I've been very, very fortunate to have some great female role models in my life. I've had some fantastic bosses and leaders who I've followed. My wife, I would say is someone who I admire as well, and she inspires me every day. And I would say the two people that kind of come to mind would be my late mom and my late aunt. My late mom's name was Yvonne, and my late aunt's name was Louise. And they inspire me because my mom taught me many things. So she taught me guidance, hard work. She taught me positivity and strength. And as you know, with me or any of the listeners or anybody that knows me, I am a huge believer, or my core values are rapport building. And I learned rapport building from my mom. My aunt, she had the biggest heart, and what I admire about her is that she had unconditional love. So no matter what happened, what was the situation, what was the, if there was conflict or whatever, she always had unconditional love. She always had a way of talking to you and a way of making you feel special. And when she had to say something, she said it, but she always said it with love and compassion, not with hatred or to be demeaning. Is where I'm going.
Beautiful. Do you have any memories that come to your mind of an experience you had with either your Aunt Louise or even your mom Yvonne that really kind of illustrate these special qualities that they had? I love that. Rapport building is so huge, and you definitely embody that. But do you have any memories that you can share?
Yeah. So with my mom, when I was younger, she had, I guess I think I was in a high school, and she taught me, and she said to me one day, she said, we're going to start to go on Thursday nights. I'm going to take you for, there was a restaurant called, I don't know if you guys have it in the States, but there was a restaurant called Swanson's, and they specialized in root beer floats. So she's
I love root beer floats.
So she's, I'm gonna take you for a root beer float, spend some time on every Thursday, and we're gonna sit down and talk about what's happening and how the week went. And as you're a teenager, you're kind of like, oh my God, why do I want to do this? Come on, Mom. I don't want to spend Thursday night with my mom. But as I've gotten older and I've, you think back of memories of her, what that taught me was how to build relationships and to improve on my communication. That was huge. And it also taught me how to connect with myself. So those are 3 lessons that it taught me. And it was something that went on for several years. We went every Thursday, and after supper, we went for an hour or two, had a root beer float. When the root beer float was done, we went home. So it was something that was memorable. And with my aunt, she took me to my very first movie. For those who, I'm going to age myself here, but my very first movie was The Jungle Book, which was the cartoon version. And what, you don't think of those things, but it was just an exciting day because I was going to my very first movie, and I was hanging out with my aunt, and it was a big thing. We went for lunch before, and it was such a fun experience. But what that taught me, what the movies, or what I think about movies, is they taught me how to, how to be inspired and how to enjoy and reduce stress in life. So, when you go to a movie, it's enjoyable. You get the popcorn, you get your drink, and you're sitting there and relaxing, and you pretty much forget about everything going on in the world or anything that's happening around you. Your sole focus is what is on the screen. And you don't think of that when you're a child, when you're very young. But as I've gotten older, and again, I think back of those memories, those are kind of what comes to mind, or what it taught me.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So every Thursday, your mom took you to get ice cream, root beer floats. And
Yeah.
I loved one thing you said. You said that through those experiences, you learned to connect with yourself.
Right.
Tell me more. How did you learn to connect with yourself through the connection you were having with your mom?
Well, I realized that communication was important, but I also realized that communication was good with myself as well. Because we do there's times where things are going really, really well, and there's times where we are having a really rough day, or we're needing that motivation. And yes, there's people around you who are there to support you and to give you that extra inspiration or what have you. But you yourself are your own inspiration as well. And that's what it does to me. So it taught me how to communicate with myself. And I know sometimes people, we used to think, people are talking to themselves, whatever. I'm not talking about talking to themselves necessarily. I'm just thinking about, the motivation of, so, now I kind of do a little bit of a mantra every morning, and I kind of look at myself in the mirror as I'm getting ready for the day, and I'm like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to go. We're going to have a good day. And, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that at the end of the day, we're happy with our accomplishments and what we've been able to do for the day. So that's something that I kind of do. And I believe that taught me how to do that, because if I didn't learn how to communicate in the very beginning, then, I probably would struggle with it now. But I think that was kind of key, because it was allowing me and for us to talk about stuff, it was not always good stuff. It was always, stuff that's going on, or something that you're struggling with, or whatever, whether it been in school or what have you. It was key for me in that respect.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's like your communication you had with your mom and those experiences modeled to you how you can have that internal conversation with yourself and how to show up for yourself. And the consistency that your mom did that was incredible. Every single week, she consistently showed up. And what a great example for your own self to consistently show up for yourself like that in the same kind of way is lovely. And I love your advice here and your experience with your aunt about she taught you how to be inspired by taking you to the movies and seeing the Jungle Book and to enjoy life, to reduce stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
What a beautiful skill that I think so many of us, myself included, truthfully have struggled with. Let's be honest, like there's in our capitalistic society, there's a lot of value that's placed on how hard you work, right? And how successful that you are, So it's like in many ways, your value can be derived from those like worldly kind of accolades, which can be a distraction from, really taking the time to invest in yourself, consistently show up for yourself, as you mentioned, that you learned to do from your mom, and take time to just enjoy life. So I think that's just such a wonderful and powerful reminder to just really focus on those things. And so cool that those women in your life showed you and exemplified for you how to do that.
Yeah,
So
they
cool.
certainly do. They were very vital and very important people in especially my younger years of life. They were always there to help. And, my aunt, they were both there to pick up the phone and give a call if something was, positive, or if I needed an ear. They were both always willing to listen, no matter what they were. And if they were even if they were in a situation where they said, listen, I'm just busy doing something. Can I call you back in 20 minutes or a half hour? And, and they would call back in 20 minutes or a half hour. They would make sure to call back and, and made sure that they made that phone call back. And it's super, super important.
Yeah. Beautiful. I remember I had amazing aunts. I feel like so lucky to have the aunts that I did. Yeah. All of them are amazing. But I remember I had one aunt too, Andrew, who I would go and visit with her on the weekends. And when I'd go to her house, I have such fond memory. I didn't go every weekend, but maybe like once a quarter, I'd go stay with her for the weekend. And it was such a treat. When I'd go there, we would bake her oatmeal chocolate chip cookie recipe, which was to this day, those are my favorite cookies. And I taught my daughters how to make them. So they make them now.
Nice.
And then we would cuddle up in her bed and we'd watch old black and white movies.
Nice.
And that experience with her brought me so much comfort. Like, I think a lot of times, to your point about like being inspired and making time to do those, those activities where you can de-stress, is finding ways where we can find comfort and connection, and I think the women in our lives, in my life, when I look back, it's been like my aunt too, or those other women have been able to provide me like that, like warm blanket of safety and comfort, right? That is so important for us to have like wonderful, beautiful, fulfilling lives.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Very cool. So what is when you think about the word Moxie, when I created the podcast, I just love the word Moxie. It's just such a fun way to think about living in the world and showing up. And I think people can define it in different ways. They can think about Moxie in different ways. Like, it doesn't always need to be like, you're going to be the first in line to show up and lead the way, right? Like, Moxies can really be a lot of women, anyone can show up with Moxie in a lot of different ways. And so it's fun for me to ask this question of guests to see what they think of when they think of the word Moxie. So when you think of that word, what do you think of, and how did the women in your life embody it to you?
So for me, Moxie is determination, perseverance, and I would say human spirit is kind of the three things that kind of come to mind when I think of Moxie. And those two people, my aunt and my mom, both had lots of perseverance, and they were huge on human spirit. I think they defined the word human spirit in my mind. And everybody that knew them, I would say that's probably something that they would remember the both of them for, is their humanity and their kindness and their authenticity.
I love that word, human spirit. I have to be honest, I haven't heard that very much. Human spirit, kindness, humanity. It's true. Like, when you think of Moxie, you may not necessarily think of kindness and humanity, but absolutely, I think that's such a beautiful embodiment of Moxie, is the kindness and humanity of like looking out to the people around you and showing up for them is a way to really show Moxie. So cool. I see that in you too, Andrew. You're so incredible at building community and really being generous with the people in your network, like very, very loyal, even like, I know I can always count on you to send me messages every once in a while. You just check in with me and you'll say something really kind and thoughtful. And it always just brightens my day whenever I get a message from you. And it doesn't need to be like this big grand thing, right? Like when you think about showing up and being kind and showing humanity, sometimes people might think, oh, I've got to do these big grand gestures. But I love how you exemplify it to me and to others, is you just show up consistently in small ways to let people know you see them and that you care about them. And I think it's beautiful that you've been able to carry that on from your mom and your aunt and the other people in your life.
Well, I appreciate your kind words. That fills my cup to hear that. And that's exactly the type of person that I want to be, and how I want to exemplify myself is by showing up. And I like when people do that for me as well. And I've had people who've messaged me and said, hey, how you doing? Just checking in to see how you're doing. And you're absolutely right. It's nice to, it's not that big, grand, huge message full of compliments, whatever. It's just, hey, just checking in to see how you're doing. That is, for me, that's huge. That means that you're thinking about me and I'm in your thoughts. And so I try to do that as much as possible. And I mentioned rapport building. That is a huge component of who I am, because it's super important, and it brings joy, not just to myself, but to others. So that's why I do it.
I love that. You mentioned that you notice it brings joy. Have you noticed any other things that you've noticed in your relationships or in yourself that have shown up because you show up for people in that way? Has there anything been surprising to you, or anything else that you've noticed?
The only thing I kind of noticed is that not everybody feels it's important. That's the kind of thing that I've noticed. And that's okay. I'm not going to put somebody down or say, why are you not doing it? I think you have to have I would say you have to have the passion for it, and I have the passion for it. So, when you think about rapport building, you got to think, how important is it to me to connect with others, see how they're doing, and possibly collaborate with them or work with them. It's super important, and it draws the possibilities are enormous by doing that. And some people don't get the fact that it's how important that it is. And it's okay if you don't have the time or what have you. I get it. But, I was telling somebody just the other day, I'm like, if you could just pick out of your network, take 5 people a day, just 5 people, take a half hour, 5 people a day, and say exactly what you were saying before. You're saying how you enjoy getting messages from me. If you take if you message 5 people a day and say just checking in to see how you're doing, hi, how are you doing? That just lights people up. And it's just 5. Like, it doesn't take, you don't have to do 20 or 25 or 100. 5 a day is, I'd say, to continue to build rapport and to show, kindness and care and empathy for people. It means, you don't know what it means to people to hear, to see and hear those messages from people.
What good practical advice. Just 5 messages a day.
Yeah.
I think anybody has time to do that.
I think so.
Like, it's a very simple gesture of generosity. That's really, really cool. You have to have the passion for it. You mentioned you need to have the passion for it. Passion that you have for it, I know, was instilled by your mom and your aunt. What would you advise for other people who may not have the passion for it?
Well, again, you can't, you have to have it, right? So, but I think you have to see the importance of it. And I think once you've seen the importance of it, then you'll do it more. So, when you've received that message from somebody checking in to see how you're doing, and you start to see several messages like that come in, then I think you start to develop that passion, because you're like, wow, you understand how you feel, right? So I will never tell anybody how they should feel, right? But I can tell you how I feel, and how I feel when I get a message from somebody is, it's amazing. It lights me up, and it pushes me on and pushes me forward. And when I send a message out to somebody and they say, "Oh, thanks so much for saying this message. It's nice to hear from you," or I needed that message today. Or I needed to hear those words today. That lights me up as well, because, and not because I'm trying to be a hero. It just lights me up because I was able to make them feel important and thought of in that moment.
Yeah. And what a beautiful, I can see just the incredible richness of your network and what you've built with your podcast. I think because you have been so committed to showing up for people and seeing them the way that you have, it's really quite special. Yeah. And you have just another level of connection with people that's lost if you don't show up in those ways.
Yeah, you have to be consistent, and you have to, and again, I'm not saying that you have to spend your whole day doing it, but, just a little bit per day. I think more people that do that, the more I think those people will see more and more how beneficial it can be.
Very cool. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. I would love to hear from you. What do you think that, from your perspective, that men can do to be more of an advocate or champion for women, not only in the workplace, but also in our communities, at homes? What are your thoughts on that?
I would just say, asking, and I think I've done this with you, Nicole. I think the key thing is, creating that conversation, reaching out is the first thing. And then asking them, how can I help? Or how can I be of help to you? Is key. So there may not be anything that I can do, but just knowing that person is willing to help out it means so much. Communication is key.
Mm.
So I think we need to learn to communicate and talk to communicate and understand the importance of communication. And we also need to be, I think, to make ourselves available and be around. So as a leader, I know that leaders are very, very busy. So I'll speak as a, in a leader's perspective. When you are asking somebody for, how they're doing, you need to be prepared to have the response back, or you need to be prepared for a response back from the other person. So if you're not prepared for the response, then I would say, you need to have that passion to ask that question, because the possibilities are it's either going to be a very good answer, or things are going fantastic, things are going amazing, I'm having a great day, it's beautiful outside, and it's Friday, it's the weekend, you're going to get that response, or you're going to get, Andrew, thanks for reaching out today, I'm really not having a really good day today. And you need to be ready for that response, because the next phase is, do you push forward and do you ask, okay, well, is there anything that I can do, or is there anything that I can help with, or do you need, I'm here if you need somebody to listen, right? So you need to be prepared for that. If you're just asking just to ask, that person's going to see that, right? They're going to see, if you just ask, I've worked in situations where people have asked, called and, hey, Andrew, how's it going? I'm like, oh, it's, I'm running ragged today. I'm my feet are just going. I haven't sat down for a second. And then the person on the other end says, oh, okay. Can you get this for me? Right. So it's kind of like, I asked you as like as a nice gesture, but I really don't, it doesn't really matter to me how you're doing. Right. And I get that people have stuff they want to get done and what have you. I totally get that. But again, we have to be prepared for the response. And I think we have to work together for the common good. So I feel like there's lots of people who we're all doing our own things. We're all advocating for our own stuff. And we have advocates for other people. We're advocating for other people's stuff. But I think if we all work together and talk about things and collaborate a little bit more, I think it'd be a lot easier, I think, in a lot of situations.
I love your response. That's beautiful. You mentioned asking and listening.
Yes.
With care.
Yes.
Really like coming from a place of true care. Like your intention in your heart is in a place of really truly wanting to connect and being open to, hearing whatever that other, whatever might be said.
Right.
And I think that's really good advice for anyone, for women too. Like, in order to build bridges and really build strong teams, it takes women and men, and all people to build a strong team. And in order to do that, I think women also need to show up with that same commitment to asking, really listening and listening with care to wherever they're at. And I think, when everyone comes to any sort of project or work environment with those three qualities, ask and listen with care.
Yep.
It just creates such a nice, beautiful foundation for creating a really collaborative and safe and healthy experience where you can really do something really great. So
for sure.
That's really great advice. Ask, listen, and care.
Ask, listen, and care. Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful, Andrew. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. This has been such a delight, a historic moment for our show. And I'm so grateful for your friendship and for your support and for always showing up for me the way that you do. And so for our listeners out there, how can they get a hold of you? What's the best way to reach them? I'd love for you to share a little bit more about kind of like, how they can connect with you. How can they get to know and be part of your amazing community?
So before I do that, I want to take a time to thank you for having me on today. I want to give you flowers today, Nicole, and I want to say thank you so much for being you and for supporting. And you don't just support me, you support everyone. And I think that's why people just gravitate to you. You're just a dynamic individual, and I know I appreciate you, and I know many others appreciate you. As for myself, the best place to probably catch me is on LinkedIn. You can definitely find me. It's Stoute with an E, Stoute. You'll see the logo of the Let's Be Diverse podcast there. So very easy to find. And I love to reach out, and I love to talk with people. I love to meet new people. I love to have conversations with people. I can talk till the cows come home about anything, HR, leadership, the workplace, and discussions like this, because I think they're super important and they're needed. And I think you can combine them with many different aspects as far as life, personally and professionally.
Absolutely. Well, let's just give a big, massive shout out to Yvonne and Louise today for helping to raise such a wonderful, amazing human, Andrew. You're doing such great work. And I just would love, I'm so grateful we get to take this time to honor them and the impact they've had on you and what they've done to just really create you and all the good that you're doing. So ripple effect, right? Ripple effect.
Yeah, they will always be in my heart and will never be forgotten. That is for sure.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Hello Moxie. I hope you felt that unbreakable thread connecting you to the women of the past, to the trailblazing pioneers of today. Their stories of audacity, resilience, and courage are a powerful reminder of what's possible for you when you choose to live with Moxie.